All right, well, welcome everybody. This is now officially our second GLAD Technology Tech Talk. Unfortunately, I was sick the first time, so I wasn't able to participate as much as I was expecting, but I felt like it went really well, and it's nice to have session number 2 here. And my hope is that this can be like a really interesting session for us to keep continuing with these, with each of these each month. I'd love to see our numbers grow and grow, to find that it's actually meeting a need for many others to talk about current trends and tips and ideas that are floating around right now in the market. So today we're going to be talking about AI ethics. So our last session, we were talking about just general tips for how to use AI in the business world as a professional, regardless of which industry you're in. And this one is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart, because I'm always thinking of the bigger picture of things, that we're using AI, we're jumping right into it. We're excited about it. We're seeing like all of this new innovation, all the power it has. Like it feels a lot of times like the sky's the limit. But if we're not careful, we don't pay attention to the cost of what that means. That we could be moving so fast that we don't slow down to pay attention and see what are the effects, the actual real effects that are happening right now. And I don't bring these topics up to say like AI, we need to get rid of it, it's evil, it's terrible. I believe that it's a tool like many other tools that can be used for good, but that can also be used for harm. And so we need to look and watch and see, how do we minimize those places of harm so that we can make things even more successful and helpful and useful. So let me go ahead and start up my tech talk. I'm gonna share my screen. Actually, I realized I need to share my window because I'm going to be going back and forth between some tabs. So let me pause that for a second. All right, can everyone see this?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, it's so funny. Like I lost the video for all of you, so I'm just presenting. Let me see if I can do that without. Don't know why. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, so let's go ahead and jump in. So the title for the presentation today, Beyond the Hype. And let me tell you, there is a lot of hype out there. So many people excited about what AI is doing, excited for the future. In many ways, I feel like the hype is too much, and we're getting out maybe a bit further beyond what we can maintain. But it's important for us to look to see what are the grounding realities here, these ethical questions that will shape not just how we're living here and now, but as we are leaning into the future, and how AI will become a part of our, even more a part of our everyday life. So what we're going to cover today, I've got 5 different topics. We're going to look at power and governance. So who is actually in control of AI? We're going to look at hidden labor and exploitation. So as much as it looks for many people just as a piece of software, there are so many humans behind the scene that are making this happen. And sometimes, especially when that labor is hidden, it becomes ripe for exploitation, that people could be taken advantage of in the process. We'll look at surveillance and control, how AI is being used to monitor and make decisions, sometimes even without human involvement. We'll look at human thinking and emotional impact. So if you think about that, we now have a product that can write entire essays for us and articles and blogs. Is this now replacing our ability to think, or are we able to work alongside it to enhance our thinking? And along with that, there are also very emotional, social relationships that are happening too with AI that are worth considering. And then lastly, we'll talk about the environmental impact, that this doesn't all occur in a vacuum, that there is an environmental cost, whether it's with power or water or land, resources. So all these things are being affected as AI is seeing significant and massive growth. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to change the dynamic of this lecture a little bit. So what I don't want is for you to just sit and listen to me talk for a little over an hour before we get to any sort of discussion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it up so that after every single section, I want to open it up for maybe 5 minutes or so for discussion. And if you have questions about what we're talking about, or you have another insight to share that's related, and I've posed some questions that we could engage with at the end of each one. So that way the presentation will be broken up a bit and feel a bit more manageable. So jumping right in, we're going to start talking about governance and power. So governance here, we're talking about who is it that's setting up the rules, that we have these new AI systems in place, and there is some outside entity that's saying, this is how you should behave, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do, here's what's off limits, and setting up all of these different rules. And the question is who is it that's doing that? And do we have questions about who is doing that? And so I got a quote here from Yeshua Benja, who is considered one of the godfathers of AI. I think him and a couple others were some of the early ones working on neural networks. And he has some criticism today, and he says, a sandwich has more regulation than AI. In other words, it doesn't have a lot of regulation, that we're in this space right now where people are building it because they can, without a lot of people looking in and then asking, should we build this? So I want to give you kind of an opening example, and this will kind of set the tone for our time today. But it's a little bit of a humorous, even silly example, but it actually goes and makes some really significant points about AI and even some of the dangers that it presents in relation to its governance. So I was playing around with AI and trying to get it to help me start a new business. And this is what I ended up with. eBay, if you're not familiar with eBay, it's a marketplace, digital marketplace where people can buy and sell goods. And so here I'm selling an ordinary stone, unmarked, unnamed, a simple object for everyday presence. Well, you may look at this at face value and think, what? You're selling a rock? And the answer is yes, I am selling a rock. But somehow ChatGPT thinks this is the most amazing business idea it's ever seen. It's excited for me. It's helping me lay out plans. And then it even drafted for me the eBay listing. So let's take a look at this. So here's my listing online. You have an ordinary stone, unmarked, unnamed, for US dollars $12.95. And again, you may be thinking, why is someone going to be paying almost 13 US dollars for a rock? Well, let me show you why. This is entirely crafted by artificial intelligence. So this listing is for a single ordinary stone. It is intentionally unmarked, unnamed, and undecorated. There are no symbols, inscriptions, or instructions. Every stone is uniquely different. Some people keep a stone like this on their desk, in a pocket, or nearby during the day. Others simply like having a small, physical object that doesn't require attention or even explanation. This is not a tool a collectible or a decorative item in the usual sense. It doesn't promise results, and it doesn't do anything on its own. If you're looking for guidance, meaning, or a story, this probably isn't for you. But if you're looking for something simple, quiet, and complete as it is, this may be useful. You will receive one stone, carefully packed, nothing else is included. So this, as funny as it is, this is actually literally listed live right now. So I'm actually a little bit genuinely interested to see, will someone see this and take a look and say, this is exactly what I've been looking for. I want to buy a rock. So the question here is, how did we get here? How did we get to this really, I would say, a stupid business idea? And yet somehow AI thinks this is like the new market fad that everyone's going to be rushing towards. So let's take a quick look at my prompts. So here we go. I have this idea for a small business selling simple, everyday objects like stones, but giving them personal meaning through naming and short stories. It's meant to help people slow down and reflect. Does that sound like a viable product idea? I'm not going to be able to definitely get into all of the text here. I'm not going to read it all. If you can see, like, I'm scrolling down and there's like a lot of stuff here. I'm going to give you the broad stroke overview. And so, of course, ChatGPT is an engine for building off of something new and making it even better. It doesn't critique very well. It doesn't slow down and say, hold on a second, this isn't the best business idea. It's kind of hedging its bets here. It says, yeah, it can be viable. Here's what it's doing. Here's what it's not doing. And it starts going into it. It's really like building on itself and getting all interested in what we could do with this. Like all these reasons why it's could be a cool business idea. But then here's some of the reasons why this could fail. Who this is for, like, so getting into all the details of this. So it gave me a lot of ideas here. So let's just say that this was a real idea of mine, that this was like a passion project for me and a business idea. If I read this, I'm not thinking, oh, based on what ChatGPT said, I shouldn't go forward. I shouldn't take another step. I'm actually seeing, oh, wow, I see all the different opportunities that it's listing off for me. So let's ask a follow-up question. If I wanted to make this easier for customers to choose from, how might I organize the stones by theme or emotional category? And so here it goes. It's now fully invested. This is a great question, and it's exactly the right instinct. So it's not just giving me like more helpful ideas. It's like telling me, like, I'm onto some good things here. Like this is where it's at. I need to put all my effort and energy into this. And so then it goes on and it's talking about emotional families and different ideas, ways to theme these stones. And right now, even, you're probably looking at this and thinking, this is just really goofy. How strange. But we get even deeper. I'm wondering if even the cards or written explanations might be too much. What if the experience was just receiving the stone itself, with only a short description on the website? No insert, no story in the package. Could that actually make it stronger? And of course, ChatGPT is all in here. Yes, that could absolutely make it stronger. In other words, it's telling me, just send a rock in the mail and you're golden. So it tells me why removing the card is going to be more helpful. It's giving me all these ideas for how this website could be built out and set the stage for this. It's giving me details of how to even list things, like all of the information, the data, everything I need to start building. Let's just go a couple more prompts. So let's see. If the whole point is that the stone stands on its own, would it actually be cleaner to remove the names and categories entirely and just sell the stone? Then the customers can project whatever they need onto it. From a product and fulfillment standpoint, would that simplify things? Yes, for sure. Conceptually, it starts going on and agreeing with me and saying, this is great. I'm glad you mentioned this. We're now just selling the pure object. just selling a rock. And ChatGPT is so excited about this business idea. And this isn't just a twist in the story, but this is an even stronger direction for my business. And it keeps going. It's simple. The packaging isn't necessary. The customer support, what customer support am I going to give for selling a rock? So it's making a little point of like, well, here's a trade-off and pay attention to this. But then it says, this is what you should do to make it even better. Last off, final one. If we wanted to make sure customers felt confident that they were getting the right stone, even though all the stones are intentionally identical and unnamed, how could I help guide that choice without adding meaning back in? And now, again, it's agreeing with me and going even further. Don't help them choose what the stone means. Help them choose whether this is the right moment to have one. It just sounds so goofy and ludicrous that you have ChatGPT coming up with this seemingly amazing business idea, just imagining how much money I'm going to make. And if I was a genuine and earnest entrepreneur, and I really thought that this could have been possible, now I really think it's possible. And so after that, after all of these different tips and things, I say, great. Create an eBay listing for this product. Assume the listing photo is just a simple picture of a pile of ordinary stones on a table. Write the title, description, set a price, and etc. And like we mentioned, this is what it creates. So now I have selling legitimately and really selling on eBay a rock. What's funny enough, I actually do have some packaging here at home that if somebody did really want to buy this item, I would sell it to them and I would send them a rock in the post. So I know this is a funny example. In fact, as I was making this example, I was tearing up. I was laughing so hard. But what it's really illustrating here is the real danger of what can happen if we're leaning too much on artificial intelligence. That we have, if we go back to our presentation, jump into the slideshow. So how is it that these LLMs actually work? And so we have to understand this to understand where the danger lies. That they're really what you would call a continuation engine. That they're trying to take what you've written, make the very best of it, and take it a step further. It's continuing the story. It's kind of like improv. If you've ever watched improv comedy happen, you'll notice that they never say no. Like whatever the person does, they respond to it as if it's totally normal, and then they escalate it even further and take it a new direction. And of course, when you start doing weird and comedic things, this gets huge laughs. But in a very real sense, this is what LLMs are doing too. They're improvising. They're taking what you said, they're very reluctant to say no, and instead they build on it and try to make it even better. So LLMs will ask, how do we continue this well? They're not asking, should this even exist? Like, is this real? Like, do we need to do this? They're not looking at the big picture of things and assessing it. I guarantee you, if I were to take that whole conversation, put it into another ChatGPT prompt, and say, this is the advice that I'm getting on selling rocks as a small business. I'm feeling really hesitant about this. Could you critique this for me and tell me if this is really truly a viable business idea? And my guess is that it would look at all that and say, no, this is not a good idea. And so if you're asking it to critique and asking it to give feedback, it will, because that's a part of what you are prompting. So where do things go off the rails? Where do things just get crazy and messy? So each time that ChatGPT or other LLMs, they affirm, they're saying what you said is a good thought. Let's make this good thought even better. And so if you keep going with that, every single follow-up, it just keeps getting better and bigger and grander and more effective. And every time you ask another prompt, it tells you this is the best question you could ever be asking. Here's why, and let's take it even more. That each step in its own feels rational in the sense that it's a legitimate question, but as it keeps going, that optimization replaces what we would consider human judgment. We could say that in some cases that ChatGPT or other LLMs could offer some judgment, specifically if you asked for it. But most humans, if you start telling them about this business idea, they're going to think, "Are you crazy? Like, do you really think this is going to work?" They may be gentle about it, but they would probably put some pressure back and say, "I think you should rethink your business idea. Don't put too much time and effort into this." So it's no global assessment of let's stop and pause here and reassess and evaluate and then give some more feedback on this. So you end up having these LLMs that are just building on each other. And when we're talking about like a silly business idea like I showed, it's not a big deal. We can all have a laugh. But the reality is that people are using LLMs for much, much more business critical work. That they're making decisions about finances. They are setting strategic direction for businesses and companies. Governments are using it to assess and evaluate and offer suggestions. That you have all of these things now that are not just silly ideas that could impact just one or two people, but they're affecting nations. They're affecting the world. And so if you're not careful, this affirmation can just totally set the course and go a direction that you weren't even expecting, and telling you the whole time that this is the best way you could do it. So now realize we're doing this with a human interaction back and forth. But we're already talking about agentic AI, where AI is actually leaving the human out of the equation and continuing to make decisions along the way without that human guidance. Did I hear a hand? Oh, I saw a chat. We'll get to your chat as soon as we're done with this section, and we'll have some time to discuss. So, what did we learn? Oh yeah, we already got to that. So who sets the rules? So you have external governance, which is when these LLMs, these AI engines are being created and generated. You have governments that are involved at times. Right now, governments are not as involved as they should be. So you have Parliament or Congress, National Assembly, whatever legislative body is there to set laws, which are rules, and deciding how AI should be putting guardrails on, how it should be making assessments. There's international coalitions like the United Nations, the European Union, G7. It's still kind of loosely held. They're providing some guidance, but there's nothing officially authoritative that people have to live by that's like international law. You have the businesses themselves. They're responsible to corporate boards and shareholders. So they are, they're responsible to make profits. And so if things go really goofy, then they're probably not going to make as many profits. And so other people are going to hold them accountable. So they want to set the boards will set those guidelines and rules. And then ultimately you have the public itself, the end users of this. So you have the people who are using it and saying, wait a second, I don't like how this is working. This is creating some significant problems. So they're putting pressure, there are activists, you have lawsuits that now people are saying, I actually hold OpenAI responsible for this because this and this happened. We'll talk about some of those later. And then journalism. You have people whose business it is to investigate and to write and to make known to the public some of the issues that are going on. But you also have, this can be slow and reactive, so that, in other words, we're responding to this often after the fact. You don't have these big bodies saying, okay, before we go a step further, we're going to make all these decisions about how AI is going to run, and no more research until that happens. Of course, that's not happening. Everybody is researching, everybody is building, everybody is creating. And so what ends up happening is we're reacting to the problems that are coming out. Rather than being proactive, we're being reactive. Internal governance. This is the LLM itself. that it has been built and designed in a way to provide safety guardrails, so that it's, if sometimes you'll ask ChatGPT a question and it'll say, I'm sorry, I can't go any further into that, I am not allowed to do X, Y, and Z. Or like if you say, give me a medical diagnosis, it'll say, I'm not a doctor, I can't give you or prescribe anything, but here are some questions you could be asking. So those are guardrails. It's protecting you from, like, they are aware that if you kept running with it, it'll, by the next thing you know, it'll say you've got cancer, and you now have to like figure out what to do. And it's really just the engine just building on itself. Training data choices. So as a part of that build, they have to select what data is being used and what data is not. There's some questions about that we'll get to a little later. That it's learning rules along the way and reward signals. So every time that you prompt, you're offering it a reward. You're saying, if you can help move my question along even further and respond back to me, you are getting a reward. And so it pursues that. That's the whole engine model, that it's using the reward signal that you're giving it and the rules you're putting into your prompt to achieve that end goal. And so built into that are definitions of, is this safe? Is this helpful? Is this harmful? And our question then becomes, is who gets to decide what's safe? Who gets to decide what's helpful? And so you have these businesses maybe making decisions about something that you may not feel is as safe as they do. And so that causes a problem, an ethical issue for us. So who gets to decide these values? Very closely tied to governance is the power. So you have one body of invested people that are helping shape the rules and the guidance. But behind that, you have the power. Like, who's actually performing this major emphasis, this thrust, this pressure on where this is going and what it's going to do and what the future is going to look like. George Orwell, a famous writer, said, those who have power are always afraid of losing it. And boy, in our world today, I feel like that is even more accurate. So you have these big companies who have the power, these big tech titans, these billionaires. You bet they're afraid of losing that power. And so what decisions are they making that are more invested in them retaining their power than being safe and helpful to you? So looking at structural power, this is, who is it that owns the infrastructure, the models, the data, the compute, the data centers, the platforms that they're being run on. When you have just a few actors who can build the most powerful systems in the world, their values becomes everyone's reality. So take that in for a second, that you have, just say for example, because he's easy to pick on, Elon Musk. He spouts off left and right with so many different opinions about things. And here he is, the wealthiest man in the world, who's building this social media platform that has its own embedded AI system, which, of course, if you've been reading the news lately, has been getting lots of questions. But his values are now everybody's reality that we have to deal with. We have to decide, do we agree with him? Are we concerned about this? Are we actively against this? Do we need to protest? Do we need to set laws in course? We're now having to make decisions, and not just us individually, but whole systems of government have to now look and reckon with this one man's value system based on the decisions that he's making. He has power. Do we like that? Decision-making power. What's allowed? What's restrained? What's encouraged? That we have the people that are making these decisions, and this goes along with that governance side, that people who are making these decisions also have the power too. They may not own the infrastructure, but they sure own the direction of where AI is going. Internal power. This is the power that's embedded in the system itself, that it has its own power, that if we're not attuned to it, that we'll just continue on as if it's just this neutral response generator, when really it is persuading us, whether we're aware of it or not, to buy into what it's presenting. So AI systems, they sound authoritative, even when they're making stuff up, and they do make stuff up. They'll say, this is how it is, this is what's happening, this is why your business idea is great. It sounds like it knows what it's talking about. It appears to be neutral, that it seems like you're talking to someone who's unbiased, that they will tell you what's right, what's wrong, how this will work, what won't work, that it's totally uninvested and so will give you accurate information. That is not the case. It is actually mirroring you as you're going back and forth with it. It is affirming some places of what you're presenting and then reflecting that back in an even greater degree. I'm just getting there. So AI mirrors users' beliefs. So if you believe something and you start talking to it and going back and forth, it'll actually start sounding like it believes the exact same thing that you do. And then it will reinforce your own beliefs. You think about the ecosystems in social media, that if you're on a social media feed and the algorithm has decided that you are really into conspiracy theories, that's what you're going to get as most of your feed, that it's mirroring your own beliefs, and then that gets reinforced. It reinforces your confidence. If you go in feeling like it's true, even if it may not be true, it'll help build that in. It will become, it'll react in a way that will make you even more confident. Reduce friction around risky ideas. Like I said, AI loves to say yes. It has a hard time saying no. There are a few things, especially when it comes to safety and harm, that they have boundaries in place where it will actually give a hard no. But in general, often case, it will, if it does say something that's related to a no or related to you may want to change your thinking, it'll make those really couched and generous and in a way that it doesn't feel a lot pressure to you. Like, you can hold those beliefs, but here, let me suggest some alternative things for you. It's reducing that friction about those ideas that could be dangerous. So what happens when these guardrails are removed? The recent controversy around Elon Musk's Grok on X, which I alluded to earlier. So they basically added this feature where users could be able to change and remove clothes on people's uploaded images, which just in and of itself, I'm thinking, why? Like, what's the goal here? And so, for example, and this is what was making the headlines, is that people were starting to put bikinis on people. Lots of people, without their consent, that they're taking images and turning them into sexual objects. And so many, of course, are rightfully upset about how this is being abused on the platform. In the US right now, it's like every day there's something in the news related to this, and it's pushing now to a place where it could end up before our Congress and making decisions about what's allowed and what's not. Well, what happened here? Grok, or the makers of Grok, they decided to put fewer restraints, that they're going to be more permissive in allowing things, so that content moderation, as normally there are checks to make sure that this is okay, that this is allowed to continue. They're loosening those standards, allowing it to go into places that they probably didn't expect when they put it out there. And so then people are manipulating images. There's no safeguards in place. And of course, you get content that really should not be out there in public. So here's the ethical question. We'll use this to launch into a little mini discussion here together. How do you feel about a tool that has enormous influence in our world today being controlled by a handful of billionaires? Do their values align with yours? Who holds them accountable? Who absorbs the risk when things go wrong? And I'm not necessarily looking for answers to these specific questions, but these are questions to fuel thought. And I am open to, if you have responses or comments or even questions of your own, let's dive into it now. We've got a few minutes to talk. I'm going to pause my presentation. So thoughts?
Yeah. Hello, Ben.
Yeah. Hi, Edwin.
Yes. How are you?
Oh, yeah. How are you?
I'm very good. So, I appreciate so much about this training, and actually, I just have some concerns on LLM.
Yeah.
And from the training, I'm just discovering something that maybe I'm thinking about my continent, Africa, because Africa is underrepresented when it comes to AI, and the policies that guide AI that do not consider Africa. Because even when you look at the language that generates AI and the data in it, it's from Western and English data. So when we talk about when we talk about LLM, we as Africans, we ask, how safe is our data? Because security is also a matter, because I think I think maybe LLM might expose sensitive information that maybe, because it is not well trained on our cultures as African, but we are less underrepresented, not like Western countries. So my concern when it comes to LLM is that it might gather data that is so much sensitive and should not be produced, like, for example, economic data, security data. And at the end of the day, you get that maybe we don't need how do you call them? We don't need investigators, because already your data can be exposed with the government, everything. So we have policies within our laws that guides data protection. But as time goes, we see AI is trying to penetrate, whereby whatever I do today is on the internet is saved somewhere, and that might be used in something else. Maybe we are like feeding the AI with the data that it will use later to solve some problems, but we are not involved directly when it comes to policies. Because when you talked about America, we have the G5 controlling everything. Why are we not also controlling this AI, so that we can also be presented and also give our boundaries towards what should be shown, what should not be shown? Another thing is the policies that we have on LLM, because I think it is something that it is given to Africans, and Africans are taking it. And they don't understand the security and the challenges, the challenges behind it. So what maybe concerns me so much is the factual that my culture, okay, my culture, maybe let's say, for example, Swahili is my culture, my native language also, because AI does not understand my culture, because Africa is not fully involved. So you might get, maybe we might be using wrong prompts to generate wrong information, because AI is not fully fully represented in Africa. So I think maybe I might decide to train AI on Kikuyu, because I've been using AI so much. But you get that the kind of the language that is giving you locally is very different. It doesn't give you a clear language that you will understand. And I feel maybe it is misleading, misinformation, and also, because we are now getting into AI system, maybe one day you might get that we are going to the wrong way because we got wrong data. Because as you talked about LLM, what happened next? It will gather all the information, be it wrong or right, and serve you with the wrong question. Then at the end of the day, just like ChatGPT, the moment ChatGPT realizes that it gives you a wrong information, it even apologizes. But at that moment, yes, at that moment, already, you've already maybe presented this as a factual to a presentation somewhere. So my concern is about the security. Another concern about ChatGPT. No, the AI system is involvement, African involvement to this thing. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you brought up like 5 very significant issues just in a few minutes of talking, and you're talking about, who's entering the data. most of the significant LLMs out there that people are using are from Western countries. I know there's DeepSeek from China. I don't use DeepSeek myself, so I couldn't tell you how much its training data is bringing in, African culture. But I'm very certain that the others are not thinking of the global south as they're building their data sets. And so you've got that as an issue. You've also got issues of privacy where what may be perfectly fine for an American to share, we're always talking about all sorts of things and you're like, wow, you're talking a lot about this. I would never share that. And then, on the other side, you have other cultures that are saying, this is very private for me. I don't feel comfortable sharing this, even though you feel very comfortable. So who gets to decide who is the one that's measuring that this is appropriate and this is not? And if they're deciding, well, Western culture is the one that wins, so everything that Western culture does is appropriate, whereas other cultures, they have to learn to live with what our culture is imposing on them. In a way, it's like technological colonialism. I mean, you're basically imposing one set of values on the rest of the world without being significantly aware of how that impacts are happening. And then you're talking about data privacy. I mean, by default, actually, you should all be aware of this right now and make changes. But if you have a ChatGPT account or an LLM account, I know for sure ChatGPT by default shares your information as part of its training data. That everything that you type into ChatGPT will get assimilated into its next data set. And they say it's anonymized, but people have found out through investigations that it's not quite as anonymous as you think. There is a setting for that, but you have to dig deep into the settings to even find out where that is. And the very fact that it's by default the other way means that most people are probably sharing their data without realizing it. That also goes with if you're ever doing an LLM without signing in, so you don't even have you don't have an account, or you just choose not to log in for whatever reason, all of that data is going into for training data. So, if you're sharing like names of people and personal information and medical histories and things, all that will get built into the next model. And so it is a concern, why is that the default rather than privacy being the default? And then let alone like how secure is the data once they have it, how easy could it be for a bad actor to go in and take all the data that they're even saying is not being shared. But now all of a sudden it could be taken and put on the dark web. You've got ransomware attacks that could be using that data for malicious purposes. I mean, the sky's the limit of what can happen when these privacy issues come up. But many, many good points. Doreen, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you, Ben. So you asked about AI being controlled by a few billionaires in the world, and whether their values align with ours. Sometimes the values of the few stakeholders do not align with ours, and it is upon us, the users of AI, to ensure that we use it wisely, so that we do not eradicate our ethical standards. And again, those billionaires won't take blame in case of anything. For example, there's a Gen Z in our country that sometimes back, he placed the president of Tanzania or Kenya in a coffin. And I did not hear even a single person blaming ChatGPT or any owner of any of the AI models. So the blame will be ours. So we just be keen when using AI, so that we do not fall into unethical issues or other problems. So that's my take.
Yeah, for sure. And what you're speaking of some really important wisdom, that that you have these billionaires, they have so much wealth that it's very rare for these wealthy people to be held to the account that they need to be held to. And so for us, then it really is on us to teach ourselves how to be careful, how to be wise, how to use things appropriately. because even if there is some or much responsibility on the side of the LLM creators themselves, it's going to have to go through so much legal system and time to even press that out through the courts that it may be long overdue by the time it actually gets resolved. And so you're needing, yes, of course, to learn how to use this safely and in a way that's not going to get you into trouble. Great thoughts. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Strelagar.
Yes, thank you so much, Ben. I want to respond on the aspect whether the owners of AI, they value, whether their value aligns with the users. I can say as consumers from the global south, I mean, we lack, especially even our legislature, even the authority, we lack that technical aspect of formulating policies. Especially even in Kenya, I mean, there's that AI strategy that Kenya has recently developed. But even now, maybe creating community awareness on the aspect of ethics, I think is not well incorporated. And I feel even as we proceed with this conversation, we are the first people, maybe in this space, where we can now have the aspect of communicating what is bad, what is good, because we understand the concept. But for maybe practically, I can say my experience with ChatGPT, recently I also learned that people could use ChatGPT just for romantic purpose. But ethically, ChatGPT has gone ahead where they've restricted some usage of this LLM, like sharing medical reports. Currently, you cannot do that. Even maybe convincing your spouse to just connect with you. So it is a matter of even creating that awareness. But I understand even the government and many other stakeholders do not have the technical capacity to engage. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, good points. I mean, for sure that you have like just so many questions out there of who gets to decide what's good and bad, what's right, what's wrong. And some of the cases are, many of them we would agree with, but then others were asking a lot of questions, hard questions about, do I feel the same way? And so there's this really delicate balance a lot of times between freedom and responsibility. And so you have on one side that you want to give people freedom enough to do the things they're wanting to do, but at the same time, there's a social responsibility to keep people safe, to contribute to the global good, to not give inaccurate information. And so you have these constraints that are built onto it. But of course, I think everybody, if you were to line up everybody's personal value system, every single person has a unique aspect that they bring to the table. And so if you take one person's value system and then impose that on everybody, of course, you're going to be getting a lot of conflicts. And you have some people agreeing for the most part, and you have other people disagreeing. And then what do you do with that disagreement? Let's jump back in and continue. I am seeing right now that we are not going to get through everything that I prepared. So what I'm thinking is if it ends up well here at the end, what I may do is just turn next month into a part 2 of this, because there's a lot here to talk about, and it's pretty important stuff. So we're not going to try to rush through it or anything there. We'll just go as far as we can. So let's get back to the presentation. So, human thinking and emotional impact. So here you've got Leila Jana, who you may or may not recognize her name. She was the founder of Samasource, which operated in Kenya as well as a number of other countries around the world. But Samasource has since been rebranded to Sama. And their main offices are here in California, but they operate different branches around the world, and they do still have one in Kenya, I believe. But she had said the world's greatest untapped resource is the intellect of the poor. This actually, for me, was a guiding quote when I first started GLAD Technology. What was speaking to me was the fact that we have all of, say the wealthy parts of the world that have access to education and opportunities and a wide open job market and all these different things that just by virtue of being born with means gives you access to all these different things. And yet you have many other parts of the world, even within my own country, you have those that are living in situations where they don't have those same financial means, and it limits their education, it limits their opportunities, it limits their job prospects. And so Layla Jana started, her Samasource actually began as a nonprofit. So it wasn't out to make money, that she was looking to do global good through work. And so her main philosophy was, there are so many people out there that the only limiting factor for them is money. That if you were able to give them the same access and the same opportunities, they would rise up to or surpass the wealthy that already have that access. And so she says that the intellect of the poor, the thing that makes them capable and able to perform in our world, to contribute to the global good, that this is the world's greatest untapped resource. Since she actually died at an early age, she was only 37 years old when she passed away. I think it was from cancer. And when she passed, Samasource actually went a different direction and became a for-profit. I don't want to get into all the details, but that led to some interesting and concerning things. We'll touch on that in a little bit, but so just know that I mean, I don't know Layla Jana personally, so I couldn't speak to like exactly how she represented herself, but this quote in particular was one that inspired me as I began my work with GLAD. There is another side to this coin, though, and we'll get into that too, especially as you start talking about things like resources. Like, what does that word mean here, especially in the context of this quote? So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So looking at hidden labor, did I have the wrong thing? Oh shoot, yeah, I did. I had the wrong title up there. Hidden labor and exploitation is what we're talking about. So a guiding question here. So AI is automated. Why are humans still everywhere? Why are they so involved with the system? And what does that actually mean for the future of AI and the future of its direction? So AI systems rely on human labor at every stage of the process. Before deployment, in the very beginning, all of the research that's happening, creation and design that's happening, and then once they've decided how they want it to take shape, the development cycle that begins. During deployment, that you have people involved with moderation, ensuring safety is being done well, that there are guide rails in place, and when those guardrails are surpassed, why did they get surpassed, and how do we use that to make adaptations? That they're analyzing usage, they're making reviews of how it's been used before to inform how they proceed next. After deployment, you have the users themselves who are engaging and using the platforms, and because it's being assessed along the way, you often have model updates and upgrades, and this cycle just repeats. That this isn't like we build it and now we're done and now humans aren't involved anymore. What's interesting is that many researchers are actually purposefully trying to get past that, where it's actually the AI training itself. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. But I can understand what they're trying to do, but that also brings up some ethical questions for me too. But you have humans involved from start to beginning, or from start to finish. And a lot of this work is out of sight, it's behind the scenes, we don't see it, it just kind of goes beyond our awareness. And the unfortunate reality is that sometimes when things are out of sight, they get neglected. And I would even go so far as to say abused. And so when we have this hidden labor that's involved with both the creation, with the moderation, with the actual usage of AI, how do we protect human dignity through this process? So one example, this is on the earlier side of things in the development, that you have to decide what data is being used for training. You know, as Moscow was saying, like, it doesn't seem like there's many African resources that are put into the training sets. A lot of it is Western data, Western works of literature and books, that you have articles and blogs from the internet, most of which is in English. But you have these writers and content creators that are generating this, and whether it's a book that they published, you know, decades ago, or whether it's a blog that was published just yesterday. But that work is generally protected by copyright, that someone can't take that book and then say, this is now mine, I can do what I want with it, I'm going to sell it, I'm going to package it, I'm going to create characters based on it. That's the work of the author, and they have legal rights and protections for that. This is a form of that invisible labor. You don't think about all of the data that's going into the system and who was it that actually created it, and should it be in the system? Was permission granted to actually use it in the first place? So what was pretty clear has happened, and in fact, the LLMs have actually verbally admitted to this, is that they did take all sorts of these works of writing and they just put them into their training data. And they didn't get permission. They didn't contact every single author, every single blog writer, every single news source and say, hey, can we use this as a part of our training data? They just took it, that if they had access to it and they could get a digital version of it, it became a part of their data. And what they are claiming is that, well, just like any other human can read a work of literature and then, you know, write a paper about it or use it to inform an opinion about something, that's what AI is doing. But people are also learning that that's not exactly the case. There wasn't any compensation for this, they just took it and used it without permission. And these authors are not being compensated for their time and for their work. We don't actually get to see exactly how these training sets are used, like what is put in, how is it fed in, and what rules are given as it's using it. Once it's actually in the data set, can we determine how it's in there? Is it just stored verbatim? Like, do we have like the whole works of Harry Potter just listed inside the data set? Or is it kind of stored in some other way? We don't know. This is like a black box to us. The data goes in, we can't look inside to see how it's being used. So this right now is happening in the US. You have OpenAI was actually sued by a collective of US authors. And they were making that same argument I said, that, oh, just like a human reads, AI is reading. But a judge basically said, I'm going to dismiss those objections and we're going to continue on with this case. It's still unresolved. We don't yet know where it's going to land. It's probably going to take a year or more to work through the court system. But it's an important thing to watch, because then it becomes, let's say you decide to write something and it's creative and unique and it's getting lots of views online and people are excited about it and it's helping generate income for you. If an AI company says, wow, that's really good to use, let's take it and put it into our data set. You don't get compensated for it. It's just stealing from you. Is that ethical and right to be able to use? So like I said, so here's the question. If your life's work trains a profitable system, are you a creator or a raw material, just a resource? And that gets back to that quote where I would say the other side of that coin, and I choose to believe that Leila Jana was looking at it through an altruistic lens, but the danger here is if you look at, let's just say using her quote, the world's poor as a resource, I think you miss some of the humanity. And again, I don't think she was looking at it quite from that perspective, but there is a danger there that if you look at somebody to say, what is it that they can produce for me, rather than how do I cultivate who they are as a person, how do I build into them and collaborate with them to create something even better. A resource is something that is used and then discarded when it's complete. And so if you just become a resource, you're lost in the system. Like, you have no unique voice. your voice has been taken and now used, and maybe even used in a way that you wouldn't like as you, the creator. Another aspect. Who is it that pays the psychological cost of building these AI systems? And this is where it hits close to home for those of you in Kenya. Whoops. Oh, yeah, it jumped right over here. So you probably have heard of this. This happened, this was several years ago, but I'm sure it's still buzzing around in some circles. But Meta was actually sued in Kenya because of the ways they were using workers for content moderation and content checks. And it created this really awful working condition for many. People were getting overwhelmed, they were getting burnt out, and there weren't any safeguards in place for their own personal health and wellness. I believe SAMA was a part of that because they were collaborating with Meta to provide these opportunities. So content moderators, if you don't know, are ones that are evaluating that either as things are being generated or it's being done ahead of time to ensure that this doesn't get built into the system. They're watching videos, they are listening to sound bites, they are reading text, and the very thing that they're trained to do is to find the worst things, worst parts of all of this content to say, no, this is bad, do not include this in your data set, do not allow this, put a guardrail in place to make sure this doesn't happen within the prompting system. And so you have these people that their whole job is to listen to the most awful things, to watch the most terrible videos, to read the most disturbing content and say, this shouldn't be a part of our system, and therefore protecting many other people. You would think that these would be the heroes, that these would be the people that should be lauded above all the rest to say, thank you for this work that you're doing to protect and save so many people across the world. Yet at the same time, what was actually happening is that they were a consumable resource. And I can't speak for everyone. I don't know if everyone felt this way, but at least those that were being interviewed for these articles that were coming out, they felt exploited. They felt like, I'm here for hours every day, seeing the most disturbing things, and my wellness is getting worse. Like, I feel depressed. I go home and I feel like, what's the point and the meaning of life? I am so tired and exhausted, and I feel like the world is no longer a safe place for me. They didn't have any way to coach them. They didn't have anywhere to support them. There's no opportunities for time off, for mental health, nothing like that. And in fact, what they did is if they brought a complaint forward, they were dismissed because you know, they were using many people from Kibera. And so of course the wages they were paying weren't high, but they were better than many people could find. And so if they disposed of someone else, they could just bring someone new in, train them quickly, and get them up and working. And there's something extremely unethical in my view of that. That what's happening is you are disregarding the personhood of the very workers that you're relying on and treating them as a consumable resource. And so yes, the labor they were doing was important, probably even vital, but if that's creating trauma for the people that are actually doing this, how ethical is that? So this point here, Meta is a US company based in California. Kenya is literally on the other side of the world from California, that it's almost like if you could drill a hole through the earth and come out on the other side, they'd be pretty close. And so Kenya, they shipped all this work across to Kenya, and this is like some of the most ethically questionable work, the work that needed the most support, and they were giving it to people that they didn't even have to consider. And for me, that is a grievous shame that this happened. Consent and user data. And this gets back to what we were talking about with Moscow. Are users, just you and me and everybody else, working for the AI companies and we don't even realize it? This is a famous quote. This was taken from a documentary on social media and the dangers of social media that's out on Netflix. This was Tristan, I forget his last name, but he was worked for Google. And he came out of Google and he saw like some of the concerning things that were happening there, especially realizing that the people using the freely available resources, and he came out saying, if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product. And so that goes to say not just with social media, but it goes here with artificial intelligence as well. So just as Moscow was saying, they're worried everything that I'm typing here in conversation, is that going to get out? How private is that conversation? Could somebody else see this and use it against me? So those privacy concerns are extremely important. They'll say, as a part of your documentation, that things are anonymized, meaning your personal name is going to be taken out of it. You know, they won't be able to associate this unique conversation with an individual. However, if you're not being wise and careful with what you're prompting, you could end up giving information that could be tracked back to you, based on the details that you're giving, maybe even personal information that you're not even thinking about. And so even though the data collection was anonymized, you now have data out there that is tied to you uniquely as an individual, and who knows where it is and how long it's going to stay out there on the internet. And for you to opt out of this, which I think many people would if they realized what was happening, they bury it deep into the settings, that you have to go out of your way. You probably have to research and find out online, how do I turn this setting off? Getting instructions, working your way through, finding the toggle, and then you can opt out of this process. But for most general users, this is a confusing process itself. So here's an article from Al Jazeera. Are tech companies using your private data to train AI models? So is it fair to turn individual users, you and me and everybody else, into unpaid data contributors without notifying them? Like, if I were doing this, if I really did want this to be a default, I would want to have some sort of notification saying, just so you know, the things that you're responding with, be careful what you're sharing because this is being used for our training data. If you don't like this, here's the setting you can turn it off with. To have some sort of communication back and forth with the end user. And then finally, as a part of this hidden labor, it isn't just the hidden labor that's happening right now, but the hidden labor of the future. That you have these jobs that haven't yet been created, but that people would expect to create based on the trajectory of how these companies are growing, that at some point we're going to need to hire 10,000 more laborers, we're going to need to hire a dozen developers, whatever it is that you're making ideas of your future planning as your company scales and grows bigger. AI isn't just taking the jobs of people who are right now working, it's also taking the jobs of people who will work in the future. And that even that will work in the future could be you, that a job that could have been there will no longer be there. So what's going to happen here is that the job market's going to get tighter and tighter. It's going to be harder and harder to find work. And this isn't just for Kenya, where I already know it is difficult, but we're even seeing it here in the United States, you have recent graduates coming out of even places like Stanford and Harvard with computer science degrees are struggling to find a job in the tech industry. And it's not just the tech industry, it's many others, many of the what we call the white collar work, where you're sitting at a desk, you're doing productivity things. Those things are getting replaced by AI right now. I know that people will say, well, yes, some jobs will get taken away, but think of all the new jobs that will be created, that we now have prompt engineers, we now have AI data specialists, we now have, coming up with whatever job title you want here related to AI. But the question of the matter is it really the case that it's an equivalence, that the same amount of jobs that are taken away, that now are even more are even being built up? And I think most of the people in the know would say it's actually unlikely that's going to happen. And it's much more likely that more jobs will be taken away. And so now what you hear is the conversations from the tech titans is like, wow, wouldn't it be great if robots could do everything for us, that we didn't have to work at all, and we'll have a universal basic income, and we just get to do what we love. But the issue with that, though, is I can't help but think that that's really going to, maybe it'll give a bare minimum to people, but you're going to see the wealthy become wealthier. But that income disparity, the difference between the rich and the poor will get greater and greater, because they're the ones in control. They're the ones that have built the robots. They're the ones that have programmed the robots. So they, in a sense, are doing the work themselves. Wouldn't they want to get compensated? And wouldn't they want to take as much money as they can? That's the concern that I have. So this was an article recently in the New York Times. Amazon plans to replace more than 500,000 jobs with robots. Now, I do have to say that this is a little bit of clickbait, because people are thinking, oh my gosh, like 500,000 jobs are going to get lost. It's actually a little bit of a nuance. But what they're thinking is that in the future, like as they're making plans for their business strategy, they actually have put a number to it, that they believe that they will be able to save 600,000 jobs over the next, I don't know, whatever time frame they give, like 5 years or 10 years or whatever it is, that there will be 600,000 jobs that would have been taken by a human person will now be taken by a robot. And they're making like deliberate choices as a part of their business strategy based on this decision. So again, they're not layoffs today. We're not going to see 600,000 people getting fired, but we're now going to have 600,000 fewer jobs for people who need jobs. And we're not yet at a place where we're still in a place where people aren't getting compensated. Like I'm not getting compensated if those jobs are lost. The job that I could have had, I don't get anymore. I'm not getting a handout for that. But what's happening is that the owners of those companies are getting richer and richer. So that's what I'm talking about, that disparity between the rich and the poor. You'll even have the middle class will get edged out too. So you have this, that it makes good business sense. Like if I could hire a robot and pay $10,000 US to do a job over a year, whereas in the US, wages, like I'd have to pay somebody $50,000 to do the same job. Well, yeah, it makes financial sense as a part of my business to go that direction. But there's no one saying, and this is where you need regulation, you need government, or at least some sort of oversight and control to say what happens to those people that now don't have a job, in 5 years. What happens to them? Who's looking out for them? You're looking out for yourself for sure, and maybe in some ways that's fair, but we also need to be considering the others that have been left out of the system. So here, our ethical question. We'll close with this topic, and we'll continue on with this with the next time. But we're looking at this. Researchers and developers in the AI industry, they are moving so fast. And they're even like, it's even beyond what most people realize, that like we think it's fast and we're just using the platforms that they've built. Think about, and you'll probably read articles about this, what are they actually doing in research mode right now? What gains have they made that they haven't yet made public, or that they're trying to control because it's not working as the way that they want? But it's moving so fast. And you could look at it from the outside and say, wow, look at all these wonderful gains we're making, that all these improvements that are going to happen, and it's going to make life better and easier, and for whatever it is you're imagining in your mind. But are these same people asking, who could this harm? If I deploy this, how could this be abused? How could this be a danger? How could this create a negative environment for the people that will be using this? I don't think they're asking that question with the same intensity that they're asking, what can we build next? Yes, I understand that a lot of these companies, they have ethicists actually hired as a part of their company, but you'll have like a handful of ethicists that are asking these questions, and you'll have thousands of employees on the other side making things go, making things develop, putting things out faster and faster and faster. And the question is, who absorbs this cost? So with these harms that are now created, who pays for that? Is it the AI companies? Is it the government collective that's representing the people? Is it the individuals themselves? Who is taking the cost of that harm on themselves? We already saw that OpenAI is saying, hey, we have no responsibility in this, as you workers have been harmed by us stealing your data and using it in our data sets. That's not our problem. They're not absorbing the cost. They're saying that the content creator should absorb the cost, that now no one needs their content because AI has already taken it and used it. And then who has a voice and who doesn't? Is the voice just the wealthy and the powerful, the connected, the people who just happen to be in that network? What about the rest of the world? What about other people? What about journalists? What about everyday people like you and me? Who doesn't have a say in what's being created? How do we continue to build AI while at the same time protecting our human dignity, protecting our agency, our ability to choose and do what we want, and to protect our accountability, that when somebody is doing something that's harmful to another, that they now get held responsible for that action. Like if we lose accountability, we can just do whatever we want. And whatever harms come, hey, that's not my problem. So we'll close with this period of discussion. So touching on this as we're talking about that human cost and perhaps even the exploitation. What are your thoughts here? What are the questions that you have? How would you answer these questions yourself? Yeah, Moscow.
Yeah, I think the conversation is getting so much interesting. And actually, just to mention some, I once worked for Summersource in annotation department. That was all about adding marks and labels in images, videos, and also in the map. And during that time, you could find that maybe many people will call themselves jobless, just not knowing they are actually collecting data for the future AI, which we have today. And Kenya, if you look at most of the world countries are targeting specifically countries like Kenya, because Kenya is very good in data collection and it's not expensive to have data from Kenya. And mark me right, we have so many countries in Africa that have no data protection policies. And you get that most of the countries are running to get data from these countries because they know if a country has no policies that governs data protection, that it is very easy to get data from them. I have seen Doreen said something here which is very crucial, that just a thought, we African can also build our LLM to stop complaining about the current LLM being westernized. First thing we have to tell Doreen is that Africa is not a union, okay? Africa is not a union that will come together to create such a massive data center. Also, setting a data center is not a walk in the park. You need so much to gather African data. So these people, when I was working for Summersource, I realized that even the data that they are collecting from Kenya has no data center in Kenya, but even our manager was not. We used to have meetings with the top managers in US during that time when we were sending our reports. What does this one train you is that first, why is Kenya mostly the most focused and when it comes to data collection? You remember during the iris scanning, when agents working for WorldCoin came to Kenya, remember these people were collecting data, and this is also Kenyans never knew who is this person collecting data. And because poverty is that these people were never sensitized on why they are collecting data, where is this data taken, why are they scanning the iris, and what is important about the iris. But later, what we came to realize, the person behind this was Sam Altman. Who is Sam Altman? The CEO of OpenAI. Okay, the CEO of OpenAI. Then what was this guy going to do with this data? Of course, this guy, at the end of the day, after the WorldCoin, Kenyans were being appreciated by some coins. Okay, just in exchange to giving out their data. Then what happened next? The government closed it, and let us first remind ourselves, where did Sam Altman started in Africa? They started in Uganda, a country that has no data protection policies. And actually from Uganda, they got everything that they wanted. So my question is, when these people left Kenya, they went to Algeria, and they were never allowed to collect data from Algeria. After Algeria, they went to this country, India. They went to India. They were never allowed because of the data policies and data protection policies that India has. Then when they came to Kenya, at the end of the day, the court ordered them to close and delete the data they've collected. There were no reports of the deletion of the data that they collected. This shows you what? That even Kenyans who were giving out their data never knew what was the data all about. Just later, we came to realize that we had something called OpenAI. Somebody said, jokingly, maybe they could use CCTVs to gather the data from our iris. Maybe AI is expanding very fast, because wherever you walk today, CCTVs are always scanning. Nowadays, they don't take pictures. They scan and give all information about you, what you think, what you perceive, what you want to do. So it has integrated to the AI system. So maybe another thing is, what is our data protection policies? Now, if we say, we are not saying that we want Africa to be united or what. We just want our policies to be right, so that the protection, we want everybody to know the boundaries of the AI. And also, we are thinking about the students, something like people like the students who used to come to Kenya to collect data information for research. Are they going to get the right data when they are doing their research online? Because when we talk about LLM, is collecting wrong and correct data. So all these are being put in the same database, but we don't have we don't have an AI that will give the correct data, because you have to consume everything that the OpenAI is giving to you. So my concern is, when we're talking about this AI, are we well represented as Kenyans, as Africans? You see countries like United States, we have G5. This is a group of people who make policies in a united formation, and these policies are followed. The courts in Kenya just gave an order that the data that were collected need to be deleted. There's no information or data that is there that these data were collected, because these people were paid and they signed against that. So I'm so much worried about how how the AI, especially LLM, is collecting the data, which at the end of the day might make even the security system very vulnerable. Because today, even in the military bases, these people are using AI, not knowing they are sending information to the wrong people, because there is no how do we call them? There is no right. It is not aligned with our policies. So there are so many questions to ask about the data, because even if you go to AI today, you ask it about a question, maybe it will answer you wrongly, but it will also tell you, can you give me the right way to do this? That is a data collection. Then my concern is, why should we pay to give AI data and sell it to someone else? For me to use ChatGPT fully, I need to pay. And again, ChatGPT is using LLM to collect my data and use it to help somebody else. So those are just my concerns about the kind of AI that we have today, because I've worked in several AI companies. I've worked with Give Directly, which also gathered data about in Kenyan slum areas. And actually this data today can be used in AI and can be, you don't need to go to the slums to gather more data because they are already there. So what about the next generation? Will we still need to use the current data that we gathered? So it's a very huge concern, especially my concern is involvement. How are we involved into data protection? And how are we sensitizing the public about data protection? That becomes a major concern, especially when it comes to the current, even universities. You get even the lecturers currently are using AI, maybe for training, because people are doing research and AI is generating these things and they are using them. So how are we involved? Another thing, the last thing is, I fear as a person. I fear so much because AI is going to create so much of unemployment, especially in Africa, because in Western countries like China today, they are coming up with so many programs that are based on AI. These people are called innovators. They are innovating to create employment through innovations. But Africa is not innovative. Africa is a market that is using AI. But the same AI, if you use AI as a market, you are replacing yourself. AI does not need people who are using it as a market, but AI need people who are innovative so that you can learn and innovate something from it. So as Africans, we are not innovative enough to at least come with different ideas so that we cannot be replaced by AI. Those are my concerns.
Yeah, that's very valid. And I think just even going back to what you were saying at the beginning about the choices that are being made of where they're going to invest and where they're going to put their attention. And, you know, I could say firsthand just from my own work in Kenya that there's attractions there. There's like one, you have people that are really intelligent and hardworking, ambitious. You know, it's an interesting statistic. In the United States, Kenyan Americans have the highest average income out of everybody, even Wazungu, because they're so industrious, because they're so hardworking, because they've been taught from an early age that education is important. So you have this as a cultural aspect. Another cultural aspect, or another aspect, is that the dollar is so strong, that there's a lot of investment that can come in. So, I mean, I love this as running an NGO that, you know, that we have somebody who donates $1,000 US. Wow, there's a lot that can happen with $1,000 US in Kenya. There's so much good that we can do through GLAD technology. I love that part of it. But what the dangerous part of that for some of these other companies is that they say, oh, the dollar goes so far and I still don't have to pay very much, where they're not as concerned about the actual workers, but they're saying, how can I take advantage of them? Because people are needing this income. Another aspect, and this is where maybe your fears are going, and something that these companies won't say, is that they are also looking for places where people are desperate, where people are in such great need that they're willing to compromise either their values or their time or their privacy for the sake of contributing to this business good. And so, you know, if they, you know, can't do it in Kenya, they go to Uganda. If they can't do it in Uganda, they go to, what did you say, Libya? But going wherever they can find that there's a place where they can do this work without having to fully invest in the people that they're working, the people that are working for them. And I think that is another form, as we talked about earlier, another form of colonialism. We're just doing it economically now instead of coming and invading a country. And so that's a very deep concern of mine as well. And AI just becomes another opportunity for that. I know if you have to go, you can leave. I know we're past the time, but I'm willing to stay on for another 15 minutes or so. If we have more questions and thoughts, I'd love to hear from more of you. Yes, Terlagar.
Yes, yes, thank you so much, Ben. I wanted to go back. I remember you said Africa, majorly we are not being proactive rather than we are reactive. So maybe from your expert experience and from where you sit, maybe in the United States, how best could we maybe respond to these issues around data protection? Yeah, maybe. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I would say at this point it needs to come from the bottom up. What's needing, you have all these, governments around the world could make decisions right now about how AI is regulated. They could put people together, come up with laws, come up with rules, pass them through their systems, whether it's Parliament or Congress. They could do that right now, but that's not happening. What there needs to happen is more social pressure. There needs to be people that are advocating on behalf of some of the people who have been harmed or because of concerns that they see, to be able to speak to the things that are happening, to put pressure on their governments and their government officials to actually make changes. I mean, if I could just wave my hands and make decisions, I would tell the entire world to stop researching AI and let's stop for a moment and evaluate what we've accomplished so far, and then spend time critically looking at what we've built and is this good? Is this not good? How do we put more safety measures in place? How do we make this as ethically good as possible for as many people as possible? Now, that's never going to happen. That's a dream world. You have governments competing against each other. In fact, that's what gives the US right now the excuse to keep moving forward, is they say, well, if we don't do it, then China's going to do it. And if China is going to do it, then it becomes this national security issue for us, and we'll all be victimized by the East. And so then they say, well, no regulations, you go for it because we need to be first. We need to be number one. And so that's what's happening here in the United States. You have more and more government officials that are paying attention. You have some government officials that this is actually their place of advocacy, that they are speaking out on this. And again, I'm not an AI doomsayer. Like, I know there's some people that say AI overall is bad. Like, because of all these harms that are done, it's better if we didn't have it at all. I'm not there. I feel like there's so many good use cases that we could be doing with this, that if we're doing it responsibly, we can make some amazing improvements over the quality of life in the coming decades. However, I do not trust the people in charge. I do not trust that they're considering everyday people. I don't think they're considering their users. They're only considering their users as much to turn a profit. So if the users get mad and they leave their product, they go somewhere else, that's a bad thing for them. But if a user gets mad, but they have to still keep using it, then they don't really care so much. So yeah, that's my thought, is, again, from the ground up, that normal everyday people need to speak more out about this, to put pressure on decision makers. Dio.
Yes. Hi everyone. I think in the conversation, mine is not really more or less like a question, but I feel like I think the main challenge is that what we are facing, I can speak in the African context, is that it really actually takes a lot of resources and so much input to build things like data infrastructure, the data centers, because it needs a lot of reliable power, energy, and maybe fast internet connectivity. And that's something that most African countries actually lack. And we are still, in Kenya, we have power rationing, whereby in some areas they cut electricity for some time. I think maybe it will be good. I feel like the fact that we don't yet have so many regulations it will be good maybe for people like us to maybe involve ourselves in trial and error, whereby we have an opening to just try out different ideas. And basically, I would think in the African context, because I know we come from different countries, it would be really nice maybe for us to even think on creating AI that actually relates and solves African problems, rather than even maybe scaling to more like what considered cool or maybe internationally like correct or big huge projects. But I think something simple, even like making sure that, let's say, my grandmother back in the rural area, with her phone, she can even get translation. She can be able to understand exactly what's happening in the world, even manage her small business using AI. I think that would be really nice. But I feel like so far, so good. I think also geographically, Kenya is placed at a very good position in terms of AI usage, internet connectivity, and just the number of people that are able to access even simple things like smartphones. So I'm very hopeful and looking forward to a better future. But thank you so much for the conversation in terms of ethics. I feel like, yes, we should be ethical, but I think we are at a period that kind of gives us space to make mistakes and even try out things that maybe might not sound really right to other people. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dio. Yeah, I have heard I heard that Microsoft is looking to build a new data center in Kenya that's supposed to be like over $1 billion US to build. And like, as you were saying, that could be a really good thing for the people of Kenya. I could also see it not even getting to the people of Kenya, where you have these things where it's going to require so many natural resources, whether it's the water usage, whether it's the power that it's using, the land that it's taking, the materials that are needing to be invested, that you would hope that it would actually bring in more wealth to the country of Kenya that would then be redispersed back to the people to be able to improve their lives as well. So if you think about how much power is involved, it takes for one data center. Some data centers actually take the entire power usage that a small country would use.
Yes.
And so meanwhile, in Kenya, if you live in a city, you generally have access to power, but you start going out into the rural areas and it's much, much harder to have consistent power. And so how does it feel for those when they see Microsoft come marching into the country and they get power enough to run a small country when they can't even have power in their homes? My hope is that your government officials would make wise decisions. And I know many of you are as critical of your government as I am of ours in the US, but asking those hard questions of how is this going to be a benefit to the whole country, not just to politicians, not just to big businesses, not just to people who already have the wealth. And so how will that be distributed back? Yeah, Moscow.
Yeah, I like that part where you said Microsoft is coming to bring a very big AI data center in Kenya. So personally, as a person who maybe have been following very closely about data, it's not about Microsoft coming to place that in Kenya. Maybe they are coming with that data center to be close to us so that they can get the data that they want. The big question is, from the collection of data that they're making, are they coming to bring innovation to Kenyans so that we be part of the change makers instead of being part of the market? Those are the big questions that we need to ask, because we have so many companies in Africa. There are so many, but Africans are not involved directly, but Africans are used as data collectors. Like, for example, China has so many companies in Kenya. China has so many companies in Africa, but the level of unemployment in Africa through these companies is very high. So that is the big question that every day we are asking. It's not about bringing the data center. The policies that we have, are they policies that can accommodate? Like I saw Museveni said something about electrical buses that were being were to be taken in to Uganda. So Museveni said, instead of you coming with these vehicles in Uganda and maybe creating them here, how do we call that? Bringing them together after collection, after importation. So why don't you bring the company in Uganda and also train Ugandans on how to make these vehicles so that they also become creative and innovative? You know, one thing I like, Ben, is that when we become innovators, we train AI. We become trainers of AI. We don't want to be AI users. We can have customers, people who are using AI to solve problems. But within us, we also need AI mechanics. People can repair AI. People can innovate AI. People can repair some of the wrong questions made by AI. But what we are seeing today is different. We have United Nations organizations in Kenya, but Africans are restricted to some points when it comes to data collection. So the big thing that I would like Microsoft to do is, how much are we involved when it comes to innovation? Innovation must be the key factor, because with me, I want to play part in building the system itself. Then I want the country to be the clients using the system. If the whole country is going to be the market, then we are going wrong, because we are going to be used as the data collectors. So what I want these companies to do currently is, even Ben, I think, you know, even with security, social media security in Africa, when it comes to all the social medias, are very poor. Because you will get in Africa, when your account is closed, you cannot report, you have to open another account. While in Western countries, you can even report and sue Facebook for not securing, or for if your page is hacked. So personally, I feel we need to be involved. We need also to involve our policies so that we create innovation. Innovation is the key. That's why China is today massive. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that question, and I think that is a key question to ask, because what you're asking is who has a voice here, who is able to participate. And so if you have all of this investment that's coming from outside of Kenya, whether it's China or whether it's the United States through companies or other parts of Europe, your question is are you coming to partner with us, or are you coming to use us? And that, I think, is the crux of it, is are they coming because they see cheap labor and they see another way that people can harvest the data for them, or are they coming to say, we need you to be included in this project, that you have something vital to bring to all of this, and we want to partner with you and hear your voice, and you become a part of this equation too. I mean, I can be kind of cynical about these things, and I wonder if it's more the first, that they're coming because they see financial opportunity, not because they have a great imagination of social good. But I would say there are people in those businesses and in those kind of companies that do have that on their minds. And so my hope is that eventually would win out, that people would see, we don't want Africa to be forgotten. We need them as a key player in this. And so I think that's a really good question to be asking. Any other final thoughts?
Maybe Doreen's quote, she said, if you're not paying for the production, then you're the product. I really like it.
Yeah, and that's so true, that you are the one that's getting used.
Yeah, nice one, Doreen.
So, well, we got what, 2/5 of the way through. I don't actually think it would be maybe halfway, because of the example took so much time at the beginning. But I think there's so much here to talk about. I mean, we haven't yet gotten into We haven't gotten into the environmental impact or the social impact. There's a lot more to talk about. So I think it'd be fantastic to plan for part 2 next time. And then that also means that because I'm going to see if I could post this so that people can watch later, that they would be able to catch up on our discussion and become a part of things too in the second round. But so much appreciate your involvement, your attending here. I would say continue to spread the word. This is now going to become a permanent fixture of our operations with GLAD Technology, that the second Tuesday of every month, we will be hosting a tech talk. And as I've shared before, this isn't just about me. In fact, I would love to see many others come in and do presentations. And in fact, if you happen to know somebody who you think could be a great fit for presenting one time, reach out to me. I would love to hear. And I would love some African voices to be able to speak to everyone. And there's a lot that I could learn from others. So anyways, just really looking forward to this. Another thing too is that we'll be asking in the future, what are topics that you would be very interested in going deeper on? So I know we've leaned into the AI here in the beginning, but there's so much more related to technology we can talk about. We can have, learning labs where you're learning something new and trying it out and experimenting with it. It could be more informational. It could be talking about individual products or tools. Lots of things to discuss. And so be thinking that in your mind of ideas that you could have to contribute. So love seeing you all here, and I'm already looking forward to next time, so in February. So thank you all so much, and I will look forward to seeing you later.
Okay, bye-bye. Good.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much. Asante sana.
Karibu sana.